And just sent off my UCAS application today. Hopefully I get into uni. It's another day of me working as an admissions tutor. And let me see the next candidate. Okay, so this candidate is good. He has good grades and he has a good reference from the school. Now it's time to have a look at his personal statement. Ever since I was a young boy, I've always wanted to be a doctor. Also, my dad is a doctor and he owns 2 hospitals. And there it goes, where it belongs. Been refreshing my emails 1,000 times a minute. What's that? They actually replied? Don't be like this student. Work on your personal statement. On to the actual video.
Hello guys, welcome back to our channel. This is our personal statement video with our tips and tricks on how to write an effective personal statement for Oxbridge.
How this video is going to work is we're going to first talk about the structure of an Oxbridge personal statement using an example, and then we'll go into our tips.
So to start off, first you're going to want an introduction, a brief introduction, 2 to 3 sentences, outlining your key motivations to study medicine and doing this in a non-cliche way. More about that soon. So in the personal statement down below, you can see how the student talks about their own experiences, and that is a very good way to make it unique because obviously everyone's experiences are unique. But however, you can't overdo this. So for example, if you go to the hospital once, then that's not a believable reason to go into medicine. So be aware of that and use your own judgment.
Right. And the next paragraph in your structure or paragraphs are your work experience paragraph, volunteering paragraph, research or above and beyond paragraph, and your extracurricular paragraph. And this should form your main chunk of your 4,000 characters. Let's first talk about our work experience paragraph. So using the example here, you can see that the student talked about his work experience and reflected on it in detail. It says that it highlighted the importance of holistic care in the hospital setting.
So the next paragraph goes on to talk about the volunteering, and you can see very clearly how he tries to talk about or emphasize what he learned from it and what it taught him about career medicine, and that's the most important bit. That's what they'll be looking for. And the next paragraph, could you show?
So the next paragraph is going to be about your above and beyond work. So this is basically extra thing you've done outside of lessons that really gets into the nitty gritty of medicine. So really looking at lectures, research articles, maybe a research project, and something that you've done related to medicine that you're generally passionate about and interested in, which you can then maybe further talk about in your interviews. So this person has talked about attending a lecture at the ICR, and then how he did a project on it on stem cells.
Yeah. So the last paragraph goes on to talk about relevant extracurricular activities. They have to be relevant because they need to confer the skills relevant for medicine. So things like communication, leadership, teamwork, those skills.
So in this personal statement, the student talked about how he was part of the CCF and has been on lots of different cadres or leadership courses. And he talked about other things that he's done as well in his extracurricular paragraph, such as his Olympiads and also extra volunteering with the British Heart Foundation, other things like that.
Yeah, and then he concludes with a very short conclusion. Nothing new needs to be added here, just to conclude your personal statement, give it some structure and reaffirm your passion for medicine.
Yeah.
So that's the general structure. Now we'll go into some more tips. So tip number 1, tip will be to put a timeline of everything you've done before you start writing the personal statement. So by doing this, you'll be able to see your whole assortment of activities and experiences and pick out which ones are relevant. And what Oxbridge tutors really like is when you do one thing. So for example, in a student's personal statement, they attend a lecture, then that inspires you to do something else. So in this case, he goes on to do some research on the topic. And this shows that you have a passion and you have a drive to be able to find out more and follow your curiosity.
Yeah, and that's something that's really important, especially at Oxbridge.
And in terms of your actual first draft, it should really be a big brain dump. So just a lot of information, a lot of reflection and analysis of lots of different scenarios, and then you can start cutting down. So my first draft was literally like 2 pages, so way over the 4,000 character limit, and it was just from the drafts that I could start refining things, pick things which are better, and then get rid of things that are worse.
So our next tip will be number 1 is to make sure you start just a few months before. So throughout year 12, you'll still be building up most of your experiences and activities to put on your personal statement. So you want to make sure you've done all of them, reflected on all of them first, and that'll take you to probably around July, August when you first write your personal statement.
Yeah.
So the reason why you start so early, so that you can do as many drafts as possible before you actually send it off to UCAS. So you should aim for roughly, 5 to 7 drafts, and each time just refine, keep changing things, and it'll eventually lead to a better personal statement. And each time you do a new draft, just keep incorporating advice from others. So it's one person, like one teacher, then you change it. With your friends, and then you change it. So you keep changing it like that.
The next point is to meet the selection criteria of all your universities. And by this, I'm talking about your personal statement selection criteria. So normally, most universities have like a list of characteristics they expect a good medic to see. And what you have to do in your personal statement is sort of use as many of those key phrases or words as you can. For example, one of those criteria may be good communication, and then you might talk about communication in your work experience. You don't really have to go through the whole list, but maybe a good 4 or 5 key characteristics that you can show in your personal statement will be really good. And do this not just for Oxbridge, but for all your universities.
Yeah. So
The next point is to read other people's personal statements for inspiration, but still make yours unique. So UCAS has a plagiarism detector, so do not plagiarize. It really is not worth it. Plagiarism, I mean, like not like even copying phrases from other people's personal statements, because ultimately it's your personal statement and you need to make it as unique as possible with your experiences, and copying what other people say will really help you to become a better medic, although it might look better on paper.
Yeah, and it's not really a personal statement anymore. So the next tip is to make sure you reflect using active verbs, and this shows your involvement and what you learnt from your activities. So the student in this personal statement shows how they learnt about the characteristics and the nuances of being a doctor during the placement, and it shows that they are keen. They have initiative to go out of the way and really get the most out of the experience, and that's something that will allow the English tutors to psychologically have a greater affinity towards you.
Yeah, it just sounds a lot better than saying I was taught something.
Yeah.
Our next step is to be honest in your introduction. So in your introduction, you talk about why you want to study medicine, and often these reasons are quite cliche and quite similar to other people's reasons why they want to study medicine. So what you have to do is you have to kind of pick personal, unique experiences. So although another person might want to study medicine for the same reason, it's your experiences that are different and allows your personal statement to be a bit more personal. So I'd really advise using a few personal experiences in the introduction to make it a bit more memorable.
And also a quick point about the introduction. So it can be really hard to start with the actual introduction. So it might be better to start with other paragraphs, because in order to actually make a really good introduction, you need to think about why you actually want to study medicine. And even for me, I knew I wanted to study something science related, it took a while to kind of flesh out the real reason I wanted to study medicine, and it really kind of took a lot of, reflection on all the stuff I've done in year 12 and in year 11. And you take that reason and you form it as part of the introduction.
Our penultimate tip would be to get others to read through your personal statement, so friends, family and teachers, and maybe even people who are actually doing medicine at university if you have contacts. Now this will allow your personal statement to be viewed from another perspective, and things that you wouldn't have picked up initially can now be picked up. So things like maybe not varying your sentence starters or things like that can really bring down the quality, so make sure you do that with your personal statement.
And the final tip for you is to ask your friends or your teachers to really grill you on your personal statement. So really go through every paragraph, every word, and see that you know it inside out. Because in interviews, not only Oxbridge interviews, the admissions tutors can actually ask you about any part of your personal statement. So even if there's a single word, a medicine topic, and you don't know what it is, research it in detail, because if your interviewer happens to be a professor in that field, well, you're a bit screwed, aren't you?
Mm-hmm. And to build on that, personally, you don't. I didn't include any books in my personal statement because I didn't want to risk being asked about that.
I'm here for one last time. So one final tip, which I forgot to include in the actual video. So UCAS has a different number of words per line versus something like word. So what happens is you're there on the actual day, right? So it's like 37 lines or something like that. And you realise that you're using up too many lines. And this one's for loads of people because they don't actually check. So they don't actually take the personal statement from Word, copy it onto UCAS, and you can do this using UCAS Track. You can do it before submitting your personal statement to see if it fits or not. But people don't do that, and on the day they're actually deleting lines from their personal statement and things like that. And so what I did was I had to delete the spaces between the paragraphs in my personal statement, and it's literally the only way you can fit everything in.
So that's the end of our tips, and we hope you found that useful. Before we finish off, we know that lots of people want their personal statement to be checked, so we're happy to see what we can do with that. If you drop your personal statement in an email to us, we'll try and see what we can offer in that regard. So all that's left for us to say is goodbye.
Goodbye.